Alright, so in this video we're checking out the HGLRC Motowhoop 90 HD. So this is a 2-inch whoop style quad with the Caddx Vista system. It actually has the Caddx Nebula Nano camera with the Vista Air unit. We've got 1106 motors on this one here. This is 1106 3800 kV, 2-inch Emax Avant micro props. This one here happens to come with the TVS Crossfire receiver. It obviously will come as a plug and play, or you can get like XM Plus receiver, FlySky receiver, etc. Other receiver versions are available. Check the link in the description. And this one here has a new flight controller board here. It's on the bottom that I have not seen before. It is a whoop style flight controller. As you can see, it's an all-in-one F flight controller plus 4-in-1 AC. So they call it the Zeus 13, and so it's a 13 amp 4-in-1 AC BL Heli S ESCs. And the flight controller is an F7, so it's an F722, and it actually comes with, I think here, up to 5 UARTs, yeah, so 1 through 4 and then 6. So there's 5 UARTs on this particular board, and this is the documentation it comes with, and it shows you the wiring, and that's kind of what the board looks like there, and you see that it'll work with Vista system like that. It shows you the wiring for the Vista as well as the other receivers here. See that? So this is yeah, I don't have any more details about the board itself other than the fact that it's just a whip style and goes to 13 amps. There's a Zeus 25 as well. It's, I think, also is F7, pretty similar to this one, but it's a 25 amp, and I think it's a 32-bit ESC for that one. So they're coming out with a lot more of these all-in-one flight controllers now. All the companies are, so it's really hard to keep up. Now the frame here is actually held together with this bottom plate. Looks like it's about a 2mm carbon bottom plate. It's X style here, obviously 90mm motor to motor. And if you want to change the battery orientation, you probably just rotate this bottom plate here along with the, when you'll have to remount the flight controller, because the flight controller is mounted into this bottom plate here, and then the Vista Air unit is mounted to this TPU canopy. And you got these nice plastic prop guards. They're pretty tough. It looks like it doesn't really bend at all. You do get a couple spares in the box, as well as spare props and screws and stuff if you need that. That's also included. And they include this right angle micro USB adapter, which you'll need to be able to access the flight controller, because the USB port's in a really awkward spot and actually kind of hard to find. There it is right there, and you can't really get to it unless you use the adapter here, and you got to be really careful with these guys because for one, they're hard to put in, and assuming you can get that in there, which I was able to successfully to put that in here and remove it, you have to be really careful, because when you're in the process of putting this in or removing it, you might break this USB port off. So be very careful when you use that. But you will need that to access the micro USB port to change your settings and basically for your transmitter and stuff like that, and rates and all that kind of stuff. You're gonna need that. And then the other thing that is pretty annoying is I think they're reusing this canopy from the Motowhoop 85, which is an analog version. We're using it for Vista here, and this USB port, or Type-C USB port here, is actually covered up by this print here. So like half the port was not accessible, and I had to actually use some cutters to cut away some of that TPU so I can access that Type-C USB port, so that I could activate the Vista Air unit and up to the firmware. So that was a bit annoying as well. And so there's a few things on this design that are kind of, in terms of like getting access to the USB ports, pretty annoying. But in terms of like the build and stuff like that, the build quality is fine. It's pretty, it looks like it's pretty tough. It doesn't really bend or flex at all. I mean, everything's nice and well built. But this is for this size, for this 2-inch whoop, this thing's a tank. It's probably built to take a beating. And it's very, very heavy. So let me just show you how much this thing weighs. It's almost 115 grams. So they've taken sort of the opposite approach. So of course, anything with the Vista Air unit and DJI is going to be heavier anyway. But they went the other approach. Instead of making it lighter, like the one from Beta FPV, which is I think the 85X HD. That one they made the Vista naked, so they got rid of all the heat sinks. They made everything very minimalistic, the lightest frame possible. Don't think, well, there might have been a carbon bottom plate in that one. I don't remember exactly sure. And they're using smaller, lighter motors instead of 1106 motors in this one. On the Beta 85 one, that one was 1103 motors and 8,000 kV. I think that was meant for like 3S. And this is meant for 4S. And so totally different approach in terms of like sort of a 2-inch, DJI whoop. So while this is 115 grams, I think the Beta FPV model is like in the neighborhood of like 66 to 70 grams, somewhere in that neighborhood, depending on what receiver you have. So yeah, it's a totally different approach, and it depends on like what you're going to be using it for. So this might be better for those of you guys that are maybe flying it in smaller spaces and maybe bashing it around, maybe inside like a warehouse, something like that. This actually does better in the wind, surprisingly, even though it's got these tall prop guards that just act as basically wind buffers. I think it has to do with the fact that it's got these bigger motors that provide a lot more power. And so even though I was flying around in outside windy conditions, it flew pretty decently. And of course it comes with a PID tune out of the box. That's pretty standard nowadays for HGLRC. Flew fine. All I did was I bound up the receiver and the air unit. I put in the modes for my transmitter and went and flew it. So what you're going to see is basically the flight just out of the box. No settings changes at all, no pitch changes. Flew surprisingly well considering how heavy this is. And I think they accounted for all that in their pitch in terms of the weight. So this isn't going to be for you guys that are kind of looking for maximum flight time and the lightest setup. You probably want to go with a different model than this one. This is going to be, I think, for those of you guys that crash a lot and maybe looking for something in this 2-inch size. It's going to be for DJI. And then the battery I used is actually this Beta FPV 4S LiPo. This is their recommended size, around 4S 450. And I think it'll give you about 3.5 minutes of flight time, depending on how hard you're pushing the throttle. But yeah, that's and I think with the battery, let me just show you that it's going to be even heavier, of course. So it's 115 plus throw on the battery, and now we're coming at 171.4 grams. So honestly, this wouldn't be my first choice for a 2-inch rope. I actually prefer the lighter setups. But again, this is going to be for those of you guys that are looking for like ultimate durability. I think this one's going to hold up pretty well on a crash because it's kind of built like a tank. Ultimately, these prop guards are probably the things that are going to take the damage the most. But again, they do include 2 spares in case you're having to break one of those. So I'm thinking like if you're doing like indoor DJI whip racing, like in a larger space, larger indoor space, like a warehouse, something like that. Something like this might not be bad because then you're going to be racing around. It's going to be taking quite a lot of damage and a lot of hits, and it should hold up with this TPU part and everything here, and the nice plastic ducts. Now the thing I don't like about this canopy is if you are going to be racing, I would want to have way more camera angle. So you're going to probably want to mod this TPU part. You can just use some cutters, wire cutters, for example, and just cut off some of this TPU here so you can get more camera angle, because this is the maximum camera angle. So if you want to go faster, you're obviously going to want more camera angle. Otherwise, you're going to be looking at the ground when you're flying fast. So that shouldn't be too hard to do. It'd be nice if they could modify this part to account for more camera angle, and then the Vista Type-C USB port. But you can just cut those parts away, and then I would say just cut this lip here where this camera is here, and then you can angle the camera all the way up. I suppose you could use this other hole there and move the camera more forward and then move it up. I suppose that's another way you could attack the problem. But it doesn't seem like this print is actually made for the Vista unit. That's all I got to say about this one. Yeah, it's heavy. It's a tank. But, for those of you guys who are looking for that kind of thing, maybe this is the model for you versus some of the other ones that are going to be more agile. Anyway, here's the flight footage, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. It's actually really windy right now. see how this does. It's all stock PIDs and rates. That's actually pretty bad. Wind is terrible. This downwind's going to go really fast this way. Actually handling it better than expected. Has some power to pull out of those dies, but I have a feeling it's going to probably wash out. But considering how heavy this is, it's flying about as good as I would expect it to. Yeah, I'm just flying a 4S 450. I like that. I think one from Beta FPV. Nothing special. Yeah, it's actually handling really well, considering how bad the wind is. Just wish I had more camera angle. There's the all wash up, but that's because I'm at the end of the battery here, running out of voltage.